Hello, my name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and I'm a vegan confidence coach. I specialize in helping vegans eliminate people pleasing so they can confidently be themselves and navigate the challenges of having a lifestyle different from the people around them. Here on my channel, The Confident Vegan, I share a variety of supportive resources, including inspiring interviews and recipe videos. Today, my special guest is Susan Joyce from Little Green Pigeon, which is a pigeon sanctuary in Wales. There was a tongue twist. We'll just keep that in. A pigeon sanctuary in Wales. So Susan's going to tell us all about her journey in creating this pigeon sanctuary. But before we do that, Susan, welcome. And what is your vegan story?
Hey, thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here today. It was really nice of you to invite me on. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. I think you're absolutely right with the whole confidence thing. If you're not a confident person, being a vegan can be really challenging, I would imagine. So yeah, I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
The question was my vegan journey, wasn't it? So I have been vegetarian my whole life. Pretty much my whole life. I went vegetarian when I was about 8 years old, and that was due to International Fund for Animal Welfare coming into my primary school and leafleting, which I don't think they're probably allowed to do anymore, but they were back then. And I was just horrified, absolutely horrified at what I saw, and literally went vegetarian overnight. I'd never heard of veganism then, otherwise I think that would have been the way I would have gone. And then fast forward a long time, so that was in 1984. Fast forward to I guess the early 2000s, and my son, who is now 22, was about 8 or 9 at the time, I think, had a very similar experience. Was at school, always vegetarian since birth, obviously, because I was vegetarian mum, and he came home from school and just went, "We're not doing enough. We need to be vegan." And I remember saying, "No, we're fine. Like vegan, that's fine. What do you mean veganism?" And he showed me a video. I can't remember what video it was, but he showed me something, and literally we watched that together. And I just went, "You are completely right. We're not doing enough. Dairy's horrendous. What are we doing?" And we went to the kitchen, emptied the fridge, emptied the cupboard. We binned it all, which is a little wasteful, but I was so horrified by what I'd seen. I just felt like, oh my days. We think we've been doing the right thing all these years, and actually, yes, we've been doing the right thing, but not enough. It all went in the bin, and that was it. We both went vegan overnight, and that was it. That was what, he's 22 now, so yeah, it was quite a long time ago. And yeah, absolutely thriving. He's thriving, and I am, and it's completely changed my view on so many things that vegetarianism didn't. I think there's such a vast difference between vegetarianism and veganism, obviously from an ethical point of view. And I just think it's the best thing I ever did. And I'm sure, as so many people that you interview say, you just wish you'd done it sooner.
Yeah, for me, the whole part of the work that I do as a vegan confidence coach is I would have been probably vegan a little bit sooner, but I was afraid of the judgment of other people because I knew my family would not want to be vegan. Like, it started with food sensitivities, and I noticed how dairy was making me feel. And I started really paying attention to food and the impact it had on just my overall well-being. I wanted to eat healthier. There was heart disease and diabetes in my family. And I did an experiment where I eliminated dairy for 30 days, and I noticed I felt better. Like, dairy was making me feel crappy in ways that I didn't even realize it was making me feel. And during the time, I was like looking up recipes on Pinterest and just, for dairy-free recipes, but a lot of vegan recipes came up. And I was like, whoa, this is like exciting food. Like, there's this misconception that vegans don't have a lot to eat, that it's really boring.
Or that it's all processed.
Right, exactly. That's a whole other argument that frustrates me. Oh, vegans are healthy. Well, vegans not just Beyond Burgers, just like non-vegan is not just McDonald's, right? So, but yeah, so when I just was excited, I was finding healthier ways of making food without feeling deprived. And forks over knives was a really big one for me. I started like looking up recipes on their website. They're whole food plant based. And so
Right.
you can eat as healthy or as unhealthy on a vegan diet, just like you can eat as healthy or unhealthy on a non-vegan diet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like there's more options of enjoyable food that's healthy but tastes really good, or just slightly better ingredients. Like you can make desserts that, maybe they're not something you'd eat every day, or they're not completely healthy, but they're much better than the non-vegan version
All
of
right.
it.
Yeah.
It's much better for your body, like sweet potato brownies or tofu cheesecake or things like that
Oh,
that just
really?
oh yeah.
See, I am not interested in food. I'm really terrible because I'm veganism for me, yeah, ethically, but I have no interest in food. I don't particularly enjoy food. I don't enjoy cooking. And we eat really nice food. Don't get me wrong. We do eat really nice food. But for me, if I could just take something that would give me satiety and all the nutrients I need, I would happily, because I'm so busy, I would happily just never eat again.
That
Yeah.
that was not my problem.
No, and a lot of people say that. And
Yeah.
also, but you're right. Along with that is the misconception that because you're vegan, you're interested in food. It's like I'm interested in the nutrition that goes into my body, and I'm interested in fueling my body. But I'm interested in food. Nah, I can't be.
I think you're the first vegan I've interviewed who's not interested in food. But so what happened with all of that too is we know where our food, we know where animal products come from, especially meat, but there's this disconnect. I've had this conversation with other guests too, that cognitive dissonance where because we just grew up eating these animal parts, that's really what it is. And it's already packaged in the grocery store. We're not seeing the whole process of how it got into that package. So it's like, and I knew where, yeah, I knew where it came from, but I didn't think too much about it or really fully make that connection. And then I watched a documentary, Vegucated, and yeah, it was a really good one. And that was like my first vegan documentary I watched. And that's when I was like wanting to be vegan, but like afraid because of the judgment and how people were going to view me. And then I had to work through that, my family accepted me for my changes. They did their thing, I did my thing. But over time, we have had less animal products in the household because of my choices. So, I look at it as progress over perfection. I was vegetarian for a bit before doing that full transition. And you know what? Vegetarian is a great transitional place when you're in that space of eliminating. But yeah, we can always do better. And then as vegans, we always do more too. There's always layers of that evolvement. It's an ongoing journey, but I don't regret it. Like I feel like I've become more aware of things, and I feel like you become more kind, or not that people who are not vegan are not kind, but there's this awareness, I feel like, that we have this. It's hard to explain, but all the other vegans I talk to understand it. There's this awareness of just how things are connected, and you think about life very differently. Totally. And because of that, you then you have all of us out there trying to then have an impact in different ways. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the Little Green Pigeon and the work that you're doing with pigeons. So yeah, how did that journey unfold?
So that was kind of a similar thing. That something just happened, I guess, and it changed my life. So I always wanted to work in veterinary practice. Left school, went to college, qualified in 1996, I think it was, as an RVN in practice. Worked in practice for quite a number of years. And then I got pregnant by accident, and I left practice and started completely nothing to do with it. I started a wedding stationery business because it was I've always done graphic design and stuff as a hobby. So I did that. That went well. Had a few members of staff, had a shop, sort of did lots of big international fairs and all that kind of thing, and did really well with that. And then got divorced for the first time, and the business things in the UK economy changed, and I closed the business and sold it. And then I started teaching at a veterinary college, And then eventually I went back into veterinary practice, and I'd been working there. Oh, sorry, no, I've missed a big bit out. So then I moved, and I moved house. And then several years later, I met my, almost wife. We didn't get married, but we were on the verge of. And I started a dog daycare centre. And that was my business then. That was my second business. So it was dog walking, and I set up a big centre, which was the first one in the UK. For looking after dogs during the day. And I was still vegetarian then, wasn't vegan. And unfortunately had an accident where I fractured my back in several places. And the business just we carried on as long as I could and made changes. But, I'd got 3 employees and it was work nonstop, and I just couldn't continue. So that business sort of folded basically. And that's when I went back into veterinary practice. And because I went back into veterinary practice, but I couldn't work in the theatres at the back of the hospital, I was working at the front of the hospital running a clinic, and I was the liaison basically between the clients and the surgical staff. So I was explaining how surgeries were done and what to expect, and just looking after the clients basically. But because I was at the front of the hospital, that was when the first time really I'd ever seen all these birds being brought into reception. And the reception staff, firstly, being scared of these birds in boxes, and secondly, just not knowing what to do and just sort of sending people away and saying, oh, well, we can't help you. Now, I'm not for any moment suggesting that veterinary practices should look after wildlife. I don't think they should. I think there should be, it might be different where you are in this country. There is no government funding for wildlife at all. We don't look after our wildlife, basically, in this country. It's horrendous. So I don't think veterinary practice as businesses should be looking after them. But then equally, as somebody that cares, I felt like I needed to step up. I'd been struggling a little bit because I was vegan by then as well. Well, not at the start I wasn't, but I was sort of going down that route. It got to the stage where I was looking after, 30 or 40 patients, as in birds, a week.
Oh, wow.
Which is a lot on top of a full-time job. And this wasn't pigeons, this was all garden birds. So we're talking about like blue tits and blackbirds and robins. And so I didn't look after birds of prey or any wild like waterfowl, but I looked after garden birds. And I didn't look after pigeons because there was a nurse at the practice that looked after all the pigeons. So it worked really well. There's 2 of us doing it. And then she left and I had to start looking after the pigeons as well. And I remember thinking, oh my God, they're so different. They're so different to garden birds. What am I going to do? So I had to learn pretty quick. And that was, I guess, about 10 years ago that I started looking after them. And then 4 years ago, I went to just pigeons because, as I say, they are so different to garden birds and they need such different things, but also because they are domestic birds. They're not wild birds. So some of them in this country are wild, but actually the majority of the ones that come into our sanctuary aren't wild birds. So they have very different requirements and they don't leave. Once you've got them, it's very difficult to re-release them because they're not wild birds. And they live for, they can live for 25 years. The average.
Really? I did not know that.
The average is about 15 years once they're in captivity. So pigeons out on the streets will live for 5 or 6 years because they don't get the nutrition, and they get diseases and they get terrible things wrong with them and they're not looked after. But once you start looking after them properly, they live an awfully long time. So it kind of became apparent that I was going to need to not only have a lot more money to look after these birds because they were going to be for a long time, but also that it was kind of going to get to a point where there was only so many I could look after. So at the time where I was living in Staffordshire, which is in England, there was a sanctuary up the road that looked after garden birds, and I just looked after the pigeons. So I would send the garden birds to them and they would send the pigeons to me. So it actually worked out really well. So nobody locally sort of struggled. And then, unfortunately, the RSPB, which is a British charity for birds, who actually do a great job on the whole, but they don't look after birds. They give advice and they have like viewing platforms and things where on nature reserves, but they don't actually take in birds. They got hold of my number and started giving it out. So all of a sudden, I was receiving 60, 70, 80 calls a week.
Oh, wow.
And then I remember one week I got 100 calls in a day and I was like, something's not right here. Worked out they'd got hold of my number. And that was really bad in that these were calls from all over the UK. And of course, I couldn't take birds from all over the UK. But it was also really good in that it elevated me or the sanctuary and the work that I do a little bit. So I got a little bit more sort of help. There's no funding available. the funding for my sanctuary all has to be earned through me, basically. But it meant that more people heard about me, so I did get a little bit more funding, and my Instagram grew, my Facebook grew, my TikTok grew, and that kind of thing. So it helped in that respect. And it also meant that I was connected with a lot of all the people that look after birds, like especially with pigeons, all over the UK. So we've got quite a good little group now all over the UK. So if I can't help, I'll know somebody else that will. And that's kind of how it started. And then 5 years ago, I just kind of was really feeling that working in veterinary practice just didn't align with my vegan ethics. And I love domestic pets. I love dogs. I love cats. I love the rabbits. Everybody we were helping. But for me now, I just don't think, from an ecological point of view and from a vegan point of view, I don't think we should be having pets. And that, I appreciate that's quite a controversial statement. And I've had many discussions with vegans and non-vegans about it. But personally, I think the amount of work and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like the ecological damage caused by the veterinary industry, by the pet care industry, is vast. It's absolutely huge. Even just with, I mean, I have rescue dogs, and I do have 2 rescue dogs. I'd rather not have any dogs at all. I don't think we should be having them, really, but I do have rescue dogs because, you know, they need looking after. They're both vegan, and they've been vegan, you know, pretty much all their lives. And at least my footprint with them is slightly smaller. But then when you look at the pet care industry as a whole, I mean, there's a pet shop just across the road from my shop here, and you go in and they do sell vegan dog treats. They get them in for me, but the whole shop's just full of carcasses, basically. There's like bones and bits of arms and legs and feet and of all these non-human animals, and you just think, what are we doing? Like, that's almost just as bad as the food that humans eat. So yeah, sorry, I'm completely digressing there. But I guess that that made me really think, like, I really struggle with working in practice now. I'm really struggling with this. I want to help these animals, but when you are working in a veterinary practice and you are seeing somebody come in with a litter of puppies and they're like, and everybody's cooing over them and, oh, aren't they precious, and they're this and that, and I'm like, yeah, but you're selling them for money. Oh, no, we're selling them because we love the breed. It's like, yeah, but you've decided that breed is worthy. And especially when you've got breeds like French bulldogs and all these dogs. And we were doing something called BOAS surgery because we'd got a specialist at our surgery, which is a surgery to correct all the things wrong with these brachiocephalic dogs. So boxers and French bulldogs and Boston terriers and all these dogs that have got really short faces. And we've done that to them. We have selectively bred those breeds. The same as we do with all animals, with cattle and with pigeons, and with all animals. We've bred them to look how we want them to look, without any regard for how they feel and how they survive. And these dogs really suffer. So I think there was just so many things that I just couldn't align with anymore. So I was like, right, that on top of the fact that I had so many pigeons, I was like, right, there's got to be a better way of doing this. So I left veterinary practice and I set up a community interest company, which is a business, but it's not a charity, but it's a not-for-profit business, which is what I still run. And that has developed into a website where I take donations, but I also have sales, and then eventually this shop that I have here in Wales. So a charity and a CIC are different. In a charity, you can have 100% donations with a charity. With a CIC, I can only take 40% donation. I have to earn 60% of our income has to come through sales. So that can be me going and giving talks, or me. I have done interviews and been paid for them. Not this one, but you know, in the past I have, and I've done that kind of thing. I've done public speaking, and also, you know, and then sort of helping with things. And when birds are given to us, when they're surrendered to us from people as pets, or when they come from other sanctuaries, we ask for payment as well. That's how we keep this going, as well as sales, you know. So that's how Little Green Pigeon sort of came about. So it's been quite the journey really over the years.
I love your story, and I just find it's so interesting how life takes us to the next part of our journey, and we never realize how it's going to unfold the way that it does.
Yeah.
And I think it's you're doing such important work helping people be aware of animals and birds. And yeah, the pet industry is definitely a challenge. It's a controversial place. I know there's a lot of conflict over, you know, pets and what they can eat. Like I have a cat who's going to be 13 in June, but I adopted her from a shelter when she was 7 months old before
Yeah.
I was vegan. And so she eats, non-vegan food. I've heard different things. I know there's a lot of controversy on cats being vegan and cats not being vegan. And I've heard that there's better ways of doing it now, but
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything because she's so used to what she's eating and I've had her for so long. I don't want to do anything that's going to upset her and compromise her, but I do feel bad also at the same time when I'm
Yeah. And I think it's
trying
really
to.
difficult with cats, for
It is,
sure.
it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
but what's helped me with it is and helps me maintain aligning with my values is I committed to caring for this animal
Yeah.
from a young age. She's a
Yeah.
seven, she was 7 months old when I rescued her from a shelter, and I've
Mm.
dedicated myself to her. And so that's my job. I'm still committed to her and making sure that her well-being is looked after.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so when I've had this conversation with other vegans who feel, a lot of us with cats, it's a little more difficult. Dogs, I heard, is much easier to transition to a vegan
Yeah.
diet. But
Absolutely.
what I've told people is, it aligns with my values still because I've committed to caring for this
Yeah,
animal.
absolutely. It would be inappropriate for you to suddenly change to a vegan diet. I do think what is brilliant is there's been so much research because there are so many vegans now. The pet food manufacturers, I mean, they're not doing it because they're ethical, let's face it. Someone like Mars Pet Food, they're not going to look into vegan diets for cats because they're ethical. They're going to look into it because it makes money. But in a
Right.
way, that doesn't matter because they're still looking into it. So I've got friends in the veterinary industry that are looking into that now. And what they're actually telling us is that actually the levels of taurine, which is the protein that cats need, that they can't replicate themselves and they have to get from meat because they're obligate carnivores, as you've said. The pet food companies now are realizing that they can actually make a plant-based cat food and they supplement with taurine. And then you have the other argument where people are going, oh, well, it's supplements. But what they don't realize is that taurine is supplemented in meat cat food. So
Oh, wow.
so your normal meat cat food, like that you get from your supermarket, is such low quality meat because basically cat food and dog food that's meat comes basically off that. It's offal, it's beaks from birds, it's feet, it's bits of ground up feather. So if you look on the nutritional composition on the back of a pet food, it will say ash, which is basically ground up bone. And it'll say composition, not ingredients. And that's because legally in the US and in the UK, there doesn't have to be an ingredient. They have to state what percentage of that is meat, but they don't have to say what quality the meat is.
Oh,
so
wow.
in the cat and dog food, so they can say, right, it's 4% chicken in a chicken cat food. The rest of it will be plant-based. It will be soy, or, it'll be whatever, or biscuity. But so it'll be grains, unless you're buying grain free. But that 4% chicken could literally be 4% of chicken's intestines that they've scraped up off the slaughterhouse floor. And because of that, because it's potentially low quality meat, they add taurine to it as a supplement. And I think that's what's so frustrating with the pet food industry is a little bit like the agriculture, the animal agriculture industry. If they were just honest, I'd actually kind of go, okay, well, at least we all know where we stand, and now I can make an ethical choice as to what I want to do. And I think the same way, the pet food industry, oh no, you need to buy meaty pet food, and it's because it's cheaper to make. So there's a bigger margin. If we can swing it the other direction, like we're seeing with vegan foods now, processed vegan foods, there's so much more of it because meat eaters are more willing to take that on. If we can do the same with the pet food industry, we will see leaps and bounds. We will come on with cat food, which is amazing. The sanctuary that I share our land. We are on another sanctuary, on a horse sanctuary over in Wales, because we lost us. A whole other story. I lost my land and I was made homeless in Staffordshire. That's a whole other story. But I moved out here 18 months ago and I was rescued by this incredible vegan horse sanctuary out here. They've currently got 15 cats that have basically been dumped on them from a local farmer who doesn't spay and neuter their wild cats. And she's just realised, this mummy cat has realised that Maria, who I share the land with, will look after her. And she brought up 6 kittens last year. Now, Maria feeds them cat food that's donated, which, of course, isn't vegan cat food. It's meat cat food. And there is a daily battle with us of like, her sort of like, oh, I hate doing this, but exactly the same way as you've taken on that cat. That is the only way we can help. These are not our animals. These are animals that have been neglected by other people or by circumstance. they've ended up with us. And what do? Do we euthanize those cats? Do we not feed those cats? Of course we're not going to do that. We're vegans. So we're going to feed those cats the best we can. And at the moment, the best we can do is donated or purchased meat food. But it's a little bit like when you say a vegan journey. I think it's the same thing. I think it's a journey that we're going through now as humans, that we're like, right, we need to do better. And if by doing better, we need to put money and research into these things, and we will get there. And I would love to think that in about 10 years' time, I think the cat food industry at the moment is on the same level as the dog food industry was 10 years ago, when it was very difficult to have a vegan dog. But now it's really easy. There's 6 different dog foods in the UK alone that you can get that are completely like competent foods. And I think the same will be this with cat food in about 10 years, by the look of it. This is what my friends in the industry are telling me, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And then like everything else, it's, the more we've got, the more people buy, the price will come down and they'll make it affordable, because that has to come into it as well. Particularly when you're looking after rescue animals like you are and I am, it has to come down to cost ultimately.
I love what you said. Yeah, because it takes time. It also takes time to change things in society.
Yeah,
and I think totally. I think it's great that, as I mentioned before, progress over perfection. You know what? There's progress now. It started with dogs. It was discovered. And because I think it was a little bit easier with dogs and their needs. Cats have different needs. So now it's like, oh, how can we make this work for cats? And I think that's great that there's more research, that there's better quality happening. Absolutely. At the end of the day,
as a cat carer, you will totally understand a dog pretty much will eat whatever you put in front of them to a point.
My cat's very picky too.
I'm going to eat this food for 3 weeks and then I'm never going to eat it again. So yeah, it's not as simple as like, let's make vegan food. You need to make like 20 different flavors.
My cat is so picky. Like she'll like something and then I'll buy her a bunch of it, and then all of a sudden she won't like it anymore, and then I'll have to put it away, and then a month later she'll eat it, and she'll cats are something.
They are, yeah, they absolutely are.
Getting to the pigeon, I love your shop. You have such really cute stuff, and I looked at your website. I saw that you have like a store on there where you sell a lot of cute products. So anyone watching, and we're going to share the website. I'm going to put in the notes below also, but I highly recommend checking out Susan's store because there's like a lot of cute gifts, and it also helps support pigeons. And so what can you tell us about pigeons? What are things that we should know about pigeons? Because you mentioned that they're very different from other birds. So
yeah,
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about pigeons and how they're different. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can talk about pigeons all day. So I think the first thing and the most important thing to get across to people, if you're trying to promote pigeons or just promote kindness to them as birdies, there is a terrible reputation that pigeons are smelly and dirty, and also that they're disease-ridden. And this has come about by basically in about the 1940s, there was some outbreak of meningitis, and it was blamed on pigeons. It was in New York, and it was blamed on pigeons because there are so many out there. And actually, retrospectively, they've looked at the science now and gone, oh, it's nothing to do with pigeons. It was actually from E. coli and a few other things. And it was actually a vector that came from other people, and it was to do with the sanitation in the city at the time. But they blamed it on pigeons. So there was this huge call, and then they got this terrible reputation for being dirty. And then there was a film, and I don't know the name of the film, but it was a Woody Allen film where he coined the phrase "rats with wings," which is mean to rats as well, because rats deserve our care as well. Rats are just living and doing their things. They're our wild animals. But he coined that phrase, and it stuck. So that was it. I think that was around about 1960 something, that Woody Allen film. And that is still one of the most common things that I get every day. Is like, oh, firstly, people think that I'm going to be smelly, which I'm not. But also the pigeons themselves don't actually smell. If you sniff a pigeon, which I regularly do, they smell a little bit like popcorn. Like freshly made popcorn, if you make it in a pan at home with the butter and the salt, they smell a little bit like salty popcorn. They've got a really strange smell. And I'm not recommended that everyone goes around and grabs pigeons. But if one lands on you, just give them a little sniff, because they actually don't smell, and their poop doesn't smell. And so I've got a sanctuary full of them, of course. So absolutely, yes, I did the clean out today, which is why my hair's still a bit wet. But yesterday when I went in there, was there a scent? Yeah, of course there was, because I've got 100 plus birds in a huge aviary. They've all got their own little bedrooms. It's a funny musty smell, and that is the smell of then the feces, of course, because they gather it all up. But also they're very dusty birds, and that has a smell to it as well. But as long as you keep on top of the cleanliness, like you would with any other domestic or wild animal, they're not dirty. And in themselves, one of the favourite things pigeons like to do is bath. So every morning and every evening, 3 times a day, if it's a hot day, their water baths get changed. And I'm not exaggerating. If you watch my TikTok or my Insta, you'll have seen videos. They run as soon as they see the hose come in. They'll back away because they don't want to be splashed necessarily, although some of them do love it. As soon as that tray's been scrubbed out and fresh water's in, they are in. They will fight each other to get in that water, and they have a bath, and they're doing all this. And then if it's raining and you get the hose out, they'll put their wings up and they're showering, and they do all of this kind of thing with their wings. They're such cute, and they groom themselves the whole time. They're really clean birds. So that's the first sort of thing to get across, is they're not actually dirty birds. Like any other animal, like a cat or a dog or a horse or a cow, of course they carry vectors that can cause disease. Of course they can. Same as with people, we've got far more bacteria on us than a pigeon, really. But as long as your hygiene is good, I'm not going to stand and eat a sandwich in that pigeon coop. I'm going to go and wash my hands properly first and then eat my sandwich, not by the pigeons. So it's just being sensible. So yeah, they don't actually carry disease. So that's the first thing to say. They don't carry, or rather, they don't carry any more disease than any other animal, wild or domestic. And they're not dirty. They're really, really clean. They are amazing parents. They also have a reputation for building really crappy nests and being terrible parents. And people also say, well, you never see baby pigeons. So the reason for that is they are extremely good parents. The male and the female bird both take responsibility for bringing up their young. And they, like us, they're amazing. This is why they're such amazing animals. So pigeons are basically vegan. They occasionally will eat an insect if they're in the wild, but they're seed eaters primarily, and they'll also eat dandelions and lettuce and that kind of thing. And what they do, but obviously they're birds, not mammals, so they don't have breast tissue, so they don't produce milk. But what pigeons have done over the years is use the same hormone that we have when we're pregnant, which is progesterone, and they have developed a form of crop milk in the wild. Really? That's what they do. So they actually produce a type of milk. It's not going to be milk like human milk or cow milk or dog milk, but it's very, very similar. It's a white, grainy, kind of strange mixture. And what they do is they've got a crop. If you imagine you or I, our food pipes, we've got a mouth, and it goes straight down our esophagus into our stomach, and that's where our food is digested. Pigeons have that, but in the middle, about here on their chest, they have something called a crop, which is basically like a big bucket. So that's for 2 reasons they've got a crop. They're amazing. So what they will do is they will see food on the ground, and because they may have to fly away quickly while they're eating it, instead of eating the food and letting it go down into their stomach and digest before they fly away, they'll ram food in as quickly as they can, because it can just sit in the crop. And then at any point, they can just take off without getting indigestion.
Wow.
It's amazing. So that's why they do it. So you'll see a pigeon, the crops are here when they're full. You can feel the food, the seed inside the crop. And the other reason they have that is so that when they are having babies, so when they've laid an egg, what they'll start doing is the food in the crop will go down into the stomach, and then they will regurgitate that back into their crop. So let's say the pigeons this morning have eaten a load of seed, of like beans and that kind of thing. They will take that into their crop. They'll start digesting in the crop, go down into the stomach and digest. If they want to feed their young, they'll then vomit that back up into their crop, and it'll have formed into a kind of partially digested wet milk. And that also has hormones in the same way that our milk would. And that goes down. And when then the baby, so if this is the mother or the father pigeon, the baby will put their beak into the beak of the adult bird, down into the crop, and they suck the milk out. And while they're sucking, the parent sort of does almost like a vomiting. This is disgusting. I hope nobody's having the dinner watching.
No, but you know what? It's really fascinating because
yeah, they're amazing. So they'll kind of like, and basically bring their food up while the baby's sucking, because pigeons suck their food. They don't lap like other birds or like drink water and then tip the head back to swallow. Pigeons actually put the head in water and suck. And they're the only bird that can do that, or one of the only birds that can suck. So they put the head into the parent bird and they suck the food out, and that's how they get fed. And both parents do that. The male and the female birds do that. So it's incredible. They're such sophisticated birds. So a ritual before mating. So they mate for life as well, generally. We've got a couple of floozies in our flock, and I'm sure they're floozies. I've been a bit of a floozy in the past. I'm not judging. So, but generally speaking, pigeons mate for life. They've got a partner for life. So they will find another bird and think, oh, he's all right. And they'll go and say hello. And generally it's the boys that instigate it, So the boys are like, and they'll do a little dance and they'll do a little spin around and they'll puff their crops up to sort of say, I've got a big crop. I can feed your babies, and it's all that kind of posturing, and it's really funny. And that's also the area where they've got these feathers that give off the light refracts all these amazing colours. Otherwise, they're quite dull, the rest of the bird. But so it's the crop. So what they're basically saying is to the females is, look at my crop. It's so fancy and it's amazing. And they do this little spin and these noises. And then what they will do is, if the female reciprocates and says, oh yeah, actually I quite like you, they will groom each other. And then they will start secreting food from one mouth to another. It looks like kissing, and it's really cute. And people quite often on videos go, oh, they're kissing, it's adorable. And they're like, actually, they're vomiting into each other's mouths. It's fine. but it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And then they'll groom each other, and then they'll groom themselves. And then that's when if they're happy with each other, they will cubby up for life and they will mate. And then during their lives, before they mate, every time they will go through that little ritual. And the boys are just, at this time of year in particular, they breed all year round, but at this time of year in particular, there are just boys everywhere. I have to really watch where I'm looking, because there are just boys spinning and posturing and dancing, and they've got the wings up like this, doing a little dance and just basically showing off. And most of the time, the girls are just like, oh, whatever. What are you doing? They've just had enough. The boy, they can be a bit much. So they're amazing parents.
I love hearing all of this. Even the gross stuff was very fascinating. I lived in Brooklyn for 16 years. I just moved about an hour and a half outside of New York City in September, but I was there for 16 years. So I saw a lot of pigeons, and I've seen the dance and the, fluffing up. Yes. Now I know it's the crop. Yeah. And and usually the female pigeon is like, leave me alone.
Yes, they are. They're just like, oh, get lost. Right? Oh, you've got some amazing flocks there. I don't know if you know. Do you know Vigilante Vegan? He's amazing.
I've recently heard the name, but I'm not too familiar yet. It's somebody I'm on my list to check out.
Oh yeah, he's lovely. Give him a follow on Insta. I chat to him quite a lot, and he's had one of our hats actually. He's got one of our. He wears it all the time.
Oh, nice.
Because we've got beanies here with pigeons on the front embroidered, and he wears that, and he quite often tags us, which is really kind of him. Nice. Basically, one of my friends bought it as a gift and sent it to him, and then he got in touch and said, somebody's bought me one of your hats, and that's how we sort of got to it. He is the nicest, kindest. Wow, he's got a story. He is amazing, and he does a lot of outreach about veganism and lots of other things. But he's amazing. But he really tries to look after the pigeons there. And you've got an incredible flock, absolutely incredible flock out there. So
now I'm definitely going to go check out Vegan's Instagram. Nice. Now I'm curious, because I've heard him mentioned before, and I meant to check him out, and then I didn't get a chance to. But now that you brought him up, I'm going to definitely check him out. The other thing I want to comment on about being dirty and smelly. It sounds like it's about environment. The same thing with rats, right? Like I've heard that rats are actually very clean creatures.
Yeah.
It's the environment, which, I've seen a lot of rats in the subways in New York, and, it's not exactly the cleanest environment. And they're just fighting to survive.
Yeah, they're thriving on our waste.
Right. I've seen, there's a famous video that came out a while back I don't know if you've seen it, of a rat pulling up a slice of pizza up a New York staircase. I've seen pigeons feasting on all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is. I've even seen them eating fried chicken out of the garbage, which I feel is sad, because, what they're eating.
You're absolutely right. And you probably have exactly the same problems out there as we do in the UK, that people go, the pigeons poo on the buildings, and it's acidic poo, and it ruins the stone, and we need to stop them. It's ruining the buildings and the stonework and the brickwork. And it's like, yes, that's true. I agree. But their poo is only runny, and it's like that because they're not eating the right foods. So, and also the reason that, so this is probably the number one fact about pigeons that you need to take away, and everybody needs to take away. The reason that we have feral pigeons is because people bred them and then abandoned them. So
Wow.
feral pigeons, the pigeons that you see in New York City, they are domestic birds. They're not wild birds. So there are about 16, I think, different types of wild pigeon in the world. Every other pigeon you see was domesticated. So there were birds that were stolen from stock doves and rock doves. They were stolen and mated because we realized, I mean, we're going back like 10,000 years. As humans, we realized that we could grow them and eat them. So they eat baby pigeons, they eat squab. And it's still done in lots of, you know, they still do it here a little bit. It's not very popular, but they still do it here. But we realized that we could eat pigeons and we could eat their eggs as well. And then it just kind of went out of fashion. And then when domestic farming really took off and we had chickens, we completely gave up on pigeons. But all the pigeons then were just left out. They were just left to fend for themselves. And because they're such fighters, they've ended up on our towns and in our towns and cities. And that's why they're all there. And also a lot of them are from wedding and funeral releases. So these flocks, you've got a really good flock in New York where you've got white pigeons. They're from funeral and wedding releases. So they are 6 months old birds that are bred just for that purpose, white birds or king pigeons because they're white. And they're let out to fend for themselves. And everyone's like, oh, isn't it lovely? We're letting all these out because we're getting married. And what they don't realise is the next day, those same birds will still be at that wedding venue, starving to death because there's no food for them. And they don't know what to do because they're domestic birds. It's the same as breeding a dog, a puppy, and letting it out in the street. They wouldn't know where to get their food from. So in this country, basically our pigeons in this country are our version of stray dogs, say somewhere like Bali, where they've got an issue with stray dogs. That's our problem here is pigeons. It's the same. They shouldn't be here. And most people think, I want to see more pigeons. What I actually want to see is no pigeons. We shouldn't be seeing these birds because they've either come from that or they've come from racing. A lot of the birds that get handed into us are from the bird racing industry, which is
I didn't realize
so
there's
cool.
pigeon racing. I don't. Is that something that is just done in the UK? I'm not familiar about it in the US.
So, no, all over the world. Very, very popular in the UK. And popular in India, very popular. But in the UK, super popular. And I know we're probably short of time now because I'm talking about pigeons so much. But
no, that's okay. We can talk for...
No,
this is good. This is really good stuff. I'm learning, but you know what? I really wanted to create awareness because I'm learning a lot from you, and I just felt like this would be such a great conversation to help others be more aware about pigeons and
I really appreciate
the wildlife. So I feel like this is very important. So yeah.
Well, I'll just do the one last fact then about pigeon racing. It's quite a big fact. So I'll just explain pigeon racing then to, as you say, to those that don't know. So pigeon racing, they breed a type of, it's generally blue bars, but they breed quite a big type of pigeon, and they pair them up. So they let them breed. And then when one of the parent is on the nest and the eggs have hatched and they've just got newborn babies that need caring. And as we've said, both parents care for the birds. So the girls tend to sit on the eggs and on the babies at night, and the boys tend to sit on the eggs and the babies during the day. And that is just how pigeons work. So what they'll do is they'll go, right, if we take that boy away, that male pigeon away, she's got to do all the work. We can take him 300 miles or 500 miles down the road, and he will be desperate to come home to look after his children.
That's awful.
Widowing. Yeah, it's called widowing. And that's what they do. So they take one of the birds away. They'll drive them 500, 600, 700 miles in a box, no food, no water for 2 or 3 days. Then they'll release all of those pigeons. They've all got tags on. They'll release 300 pigeons from all the different races all over wherever the race was started from. They will take them to France, or they'll take them to the south of England, and they will let them go. And that pigeon, the only thing they are focused on for those 3 days is getting home to their babies, getting home to their wives, because they mate for life and they breed children, their children. So that it's not just like eggs willy-nilly. That's what they're going home to look after. So they fly home. Now a pigeon will generally fly for about 20 minutes a day. That's all they need to fly for. They're just flying for food, and they're actually quite sedentary birds. They walk more than they fly, which is why they tend to get problems in cities with feet, but that's a whole other thing. So pigeons aren't like swallows or swifts or herons. They're not birds that tend to fly for food. They tend to walk for their food. So you're now asking a fairly sedentary bird to fly maybe 500 or 600 miles with no food or water in them at all, and with no way of getting any food or water, and no knowledge of anywhere they can get food or water, because they're domestic, not wild. So they're flying all the way home, and they've got an amazing, that pigeons have got like an inbuilt GPS. They don't know why. We still haven't worked out why, but for some reason pigeons have sort of almost like a magnetic thing going on where they can follow our roads and they will find their way home every time. They're incredible. Again, that's another thing, we don't really know why that is, but they are brilliant at it. And they will place bets on which pigeon is going to win, and the pigeon that gets home first, you might win anything from £500 if it's a local competition to 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds. And some of these birds, in fact, there was a pigeon sold last year, an Indian pigeon, that sold for 1.2 million pounds. So this is big business. This is really big business. This is like horse racing business. It's the same level as that. It's worth a lot of money, which is why they keep doing it. So these poor birds, particularly when they're taken abroad, are expected to fly across the ocean. They are not birds that normally fly. I mean, they can, but they're not normally flying. So about 80% of the birds that get let out for these races drown because they're tired. They come down in the ocean. They've never seen the sea before, and they just drown. Because pigeons can float, but once they're in the water and they're exhausted, they just drown in the sea. It's horrific. It is a blood sport. It's absolutely horrific.
That is just really sad.
Yeah. Disgusting, isn't it? And the RSPCA, which is our animal charity here, and you've got, I think, the American version, ASPCA, whatever they're called, they have nothing to say on the issue. They're like, no, it's fine. It's a regulated sport. It's fine. The same as they do with horse racing. It's the same thing. It's horrific. So a lot of the birds that come into us have come down in their first or their second race, because they're very young birds. They've come down and they just can't find their way home. So they join a local flock, but then they become very poorly because they're not used to eating the crappy food like you were talking about on the street. They're used to eating high quality racing bird food, and they become ill, and then people pick them up and bring them to sanctuaries like ours. And then we can never let them leave. And what we do is, they've all got their telephone numbers on, or they've got a number on that you can go online and track the owner. We'll phone their owners every time. And every time they say to us, I'll just kill them. They're no good to us now.
That is just the saddest thing. I'm so glad you shared this, because I was completely unaware of it. I've heard about pigeon racing in passing before, but I had never really heard about it as like a regular thing, or really understood what was involved. And I'm really glad that you shared that.
Yeah, so we're working with
feelings. These animals have feelings, and it's
they are. It's horrendous, and that's it. We're exploiting them not only for money, but by that exploitation, we're exploiting their emotion. You know, we're exploiting them because they want to get home. So we're working with PETA at the moment, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We have been working with them since January, and we've got 3 of King Charles. We've got 3 of his pigeons, because he's the patron of the Racing Pigeon Association here in the UK, and they've written to him and asked him to step away. They've said, look, you don't need to be racing pigeons, because he has pigeon racing flocks at Sandringham here in the UK, which is just so outdated. And for a man that says he cares about the environment, I mean, I know, and I won't bash the monarchy, I'm not into that, but for a man who says he's ethical and he's forward thinking, it's just such a barbaric thing for him to be involved with. So we've asked him to step away, and so what PETA have done is, one of their donators has purchased 3 of his pigeons, came up for auction. It was a charity auction. The money didn't go into the Pigeon Racing Association, didn't go to the king. The money went to a charity, and we've had 3 of his pigeons. And it's sort of been in the news over here. So they asked us to get involved as a sanctuary, and we've got them, Vera, Cliff and Dover, who are lovely, lovely, lovely racing pigeons. They're all egging with other birds now. They've all got partners, and they're really happy. They've been with us for 5 months now, and they'll live out their whole lives with us. And PETA pay for their care. They haven't sort of dumped them on us and put the onus on us. They pay for their care, and they're really lovely birds, and they are now free from exploitation. They won't ever be asked to race. They won't ever have to starve. They're going to have a really nice life with us. And that was to try and, obviously you can't get much bigger a public figure than King Charles of England, and it's to just try and get some traction with that, and it's really worked. We've had a lot of interest into why we need to stop racing. You can imagine we've had a lot of bad press as well, which I love. I absolutely love. I'm like, love controversy, absolutely love it, and I'm happy to argue all day long with vegans and non-vegans and whoever wants to argue with me. But mostly it's non-vegans, as you can imagine, I'm arguing with about this, and just trying to put across why it's so bad and why we need to stop it. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of months.
That is amazing. You're doing such impactful work. It's horrific that, you know, people don't think these animals have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And just being empathetic, thinking about these poor birds who mate for life, they're being yanked away from their partner, their children, who they love, and they're just so desperate to get back. And sometimes they make it and sometimes they don't. And so the fact that you're there to help them and support and just bringing awareness, I think the work that you're doing is so important. And you know, and I hope that anyone listening is going to think a little bit more about not just pigeons, but just animals in general. You know, horse racing is another industry, zoos. You know, there's so many, you know, circuses. You know, there's been working on all of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, just
oh, totally. When I got into this, particularly with the pigeon sanctuary, most people think that I spend my day looking after the pigeons, and of course I do spend quite a lot of time looking after the pigeons. But actually, the majority of my day it's about 2 hours a day looking after pigeons, and the rest of the time it's fundraising for the sanctuary. But actually, about 4 hours a day of every day is spent basically raising awareness and advocating for pigeons and for veganism. And I never in a million years thought that would be how my life would turn out.
It's interesting how things fold. Like for me, I got a coaching certification back in 2017, and as also the same time around the time I became vegan, and I completed this 10-month program, and I was trying, focusing on different aspects of my coaching. And then I realized this theme of confidence and people pleasing from just other areas of my life. And then also as I became vegan and really immersed myself in having a vegan lifestyle, and also just embracing being different from all the non-vegans in my life and coming up with a way to coexist with them. And then my channels had a couple different names, and then back in October I was like, the Confident Vegan, and I just rebranded everything. Yeah. I never would have thought in a million years that I would be, you told me like 7-8 years ago that I would be, educating people on different aspects of veganism and supporting them, and just just bringing that awareness on and creating support to help people. Totally. Doing that.
I absolutely think you're completely right. And I think what we need to do as well is embrace that, because being a vegan, there is so much horror that you are surrounded with every day, because once your eyes are open, that's it, isn't it? And I think all of us probably go through a stage where you think, I wish I didn't know. I wish I could switch it off. I wish I didn't know this is what happened. And I wish people around me weren't so ignorant. And why are the people that I love being so horrible and having, why can't they see it? And I think to deal with that, you have to look at the positive and say, do you know what? My life is so different and so enriched because I know this and because I can make a difference. And that, whether that's through work or whether that's through having a quiet conversation with somebody or just through your business, or just everyday things. Just knowing that you're making a difference, every single vegan is making a difference. Even if you do no activism at all, you're still making a difference. And I think that's how you have to get through it. And just think, actually, like, your life is so much richer because of what you're doing, and you've got a business about it now, and it's your whole life gets taken over. And my life is so different. I never thought that this is what I would do. And it's really hard work. It's really, really hard work. And you never get a day off as a sanctuary owner. And you know what? You kind of don't need one, because when you've got that drive to look after the animals in your care, nothing else matters. Like, literally nothing else matters to me. And the people that support me see that, and they feel the same. And it is life enriching, absolutely life enriching. And I think if anybody that isn't vegan thinks, oh, it's going to be hard, or oh, it's going to be so difficult. And I agree, like, especially if they're not, I mean, you've probably gathered I don't care what people think of me, and I'm very lucky that I've always been that way. You know, and I'm also gay, and I'm, you know, and I've got a transgender son, and there's you know, and I was a goth. There's so many reasons for people to hate me that they all, you know, so, and I'm just like, I don't
But
care.
you know what? It's authenticity. That's
Yeah,
that's what I'm all about. Being one of my core values is authenticity.
yeah,
So
yeah,
whatever that looks like for one person, you know,
absolutely.
and so what you're doing is amazing,
Yeah,
and just
but it's so easy to have that drive when you're caring about other beings, isn't it? And I think that's what all vegans are doing. So absolutely, I think, like, draw your confidence, and draw your you can bat away the negative by drawing in on the positive things by being vegan, knowing that you're doing the right thing, and knowing that you're just trying to help and make everything a bit more compassionate. That's what you need to draw from.
absolutely. And when
I
you know
love
what
what you're doing. I think that's incredible.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I just in March I launched a virtual meetup group called the Vegan Sip and Chat that's just starting to
Oh,
run
that's
and
awesome.
ball. Yeah, so I'm starting to have a community of people because it's hard to find support and sometimes just going to a meeting. So creating this virtual community, we've had a couple of meetups. I'm going to be doing by the time this comes out, it's going to be past the event, but I'm going to be doing a setting vegan boundaries masterclass to help
Brilliant.
vegans setting boundaries and having those complicated conversations.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm just creating this safe space for vegans to feel supported and connect with
That's
other
so
vegans and
exciting.
learn from. Yeah. So
That's
come check.
brilliant.
I'll put the link in the below for
Yeah,
that.
do it. Let's see that.
Yeah, feel free to join. I mean, so probably the time zone difference might be different, but I'm working on planning events. I want to like have different things, and I'm at some point looking to have guest speakers. So if you ever want to speak to the group in the future, let me know. That would be
Talk
great.
about pigeons. Yes, please.
I think you're a lot of fun and just a great wealth of information. I could talk to you forever, but we got to wrap up. So before we do, are there any supportive resources you'd like to recommend, either on veganism or animals, or just anything that can support anybody watching today?
So you and I are both part of the Vegan Business Tribe, which is how we met. And I've been part of the tribe for, I think, since they started about 4 years now. And David and Lisa have been amazing.
He's amazing.
Yeah, they are incredible. So I would definitely say, if you're in a vegan business or you're thinking of that, definitely go and check out Vegan Business Tribe, just to see, because you'll meet amazing people like you. And as
Yeah.
part of that, the people I've met along the way, one of them called Callum, who is a vegan nutritionist, he's called Yum Fu Life. His Instagram is absolutely full of really, really good ways to give you, like, get a good nutritional balance, like what you should be eating. And then also it's really good for, you know, when people, meat eaters, are coming at you like, oh, where'd you get your calcium?
Oh
He's a
yeah.
really good one to be like, right, I'll have a look at what Callum says. And it's just, I think that really helps, that if you've got that knowledge stored because you've seen it in a fun way. His Insta's quite good fun. He's definitely someone to check out, would be Yum Fu Life. He's fantastic.
Oh, great. I'll put the link in the notes below.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I can't really think of, I'm sure there's other people that I could think of, but not.
But you know what? That's great, because that's the reason why I like to have people share resources, is to help those build that wealth of knowledge. Because
Yeah.
one of my favorite sayings is knowledge conquers fear. And when I started becoming more
Oh, I love that.
knowledgeable,
It's so true.
yeah, once you have knowledge on something, you can face that fear. You'll know how to address it. That helped me navigate the challenges when I educated how to answer different things. And, you know, I've had, you know, family members saying, well, what do you do for protein? Well, that's not real protein. And, you know, just kind of,
Yeah.
we've heard it all at this point. But just by having that knowledge, it conquers that fear of all those different things that we face as vegans. And so
Yeah.
that's a great resource. I'm definitely going to check him out, and
Yeah,
I'll
he's
put
great.
the link below. And then what's the best way for people to connect with you?
So you can follow us on all the socials. We are at Little Green Pigeon. or you can just go on our website, which is www.littlegreenpigeon.co.uk. And my telephone number is on there. Anybody can WhatsApp me. I'm supporting about 4 different people at the moment who are in a transition from vegetarian to vegan, as well, who got involved because we took pigeons from them, but then we got chatting and realised they weren't vegan. So I'm always down to help with that as well. I've been quite a long-term vegan. We have got a party. If you're in the UK, we've got a party coming up in August.
Oh, how
And we've got
fun.
vegan Queen V and Be Friendly coming to play for us because they're amazing. That's our fundraiser for the year. So there's a lot going on here. So yeah, if you give us a follow, just on Instagram's probably my favorite one that I post on, but TikTok as well. Our TikTok has slightly different content and that's doing quite well. So yeah, Little Green Pigeon.
Awesome. I'm going to include all of that in the notes
Thank
below.
you.
Susan, it is amazing having you on as a guest. I feel like I talked to you all day. I really learned a lot.
Thank you so
And
much.
I hope, my mission was to create more awareness on pigeons because I didn't really know all the details like you just shared. And the pigeon racing is just very sad and horrific. And
Yeah.
please go check out Little Green Pigeon. Oh, support Little Green Pigeon. Check out the shop. And yeah, it was so great chatting with you and everyone watching. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.